What comes after regime change? Might be, oh, well, we need a small number of U.S. troops to support the new regime. We have seen this play before. Regime change, you have no idea how this is going to work out. You have no idea.
We've spent $8 trillion in the Middle East, and we're not fixing our roads in this country. How stupid is it? And we're not fixing our highways, our tunnels, our bridges, our hospitals even, our schools even. It's crazy.
These globalists want to squander all of America's strength, blood, and treasure, chasing monsters and phantoms overseas. In addition, there must also be a complete commitment to dismantling the entire globalist neocon establishment that is perpetually dragging us into endless wars, pretending to fight for freedom and democracy abroad.
We should have never gone into the Middle East. We should have never gone into the Middle East. Under my leadership, we will turn the page forever on those foolish, stupid days of never-ending wars.
We're rebuilding our military stronger than ever before, and we are not going to deplete it again on stupid, senseless, endless wars. World War III has never been closer than it is right now. We need to clean house of all of the warmongers and America last globalists and the deep state. I am the president who delivers peace.
I was the first president in decades who didn't start a war.
And the worst, most incompetent, most corrupt president in history is going to drag us into World War III. And this horrible, horrible president is dragging us toward World War III. We're going to be in World War III soon, because I think we would have been good with Iran. I don't want to do anything bad to Iran. Large sections of the Middle East. I mean, look at the death and destruction that's taken place. And none of this would have happened if I were president. Our opponents join with warmongers and neocons to wage endless wars, these wars that never end. Together we're fighting to secure our borders, end the endless foreign wars, and defend the working people of America. But the Muslim and Arab voters in Michigan and across the country want a stop to the endless wars and a return to peace in the Middle East. That's all they want. Speaking of World War III, I'll keep you out of World War III. What would happen if we had a war? We won't, with me, but you will have World War III, I believe, without me, but we won't have. I will be sure that World War III will not happen. I'm the only one can say it won't happen. But I stand here today, and I'm the only candidate who can make this promise. I will prevent, and very easily, World War III, very easily.
Well, everybody, I want to welcome you to today's live stream. This is an absolute urgent matter. Many of you have been following the incredible story that we've seen. The United States, the United States has officially launched a war against Iran, and we're going to be breaking it down today. Joining me in the studio today is Alex from Reporterfy Media. We're also going to be having Carl Zah is going to be joining us momentarily. We wanted to jump on YouTube to discuss all things. So, Alex, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Mr. Jansen, for having me here tonight. Unfortunately, it's not what I would call a typical Sunday here in China. The mood here is very mute, to say the least.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're going to be breaking down everything that's happened over the past 24 hours and more. And today we're going to be discussing what this means for geopolitics. I think many of you have seen, I actually had a chance to sit down with Professor Jeffrey Sachs. It turned out to be just hours before the attack was launched. We went ahead and launched that video on YouTube because we knew that the attack was imminent. And obviously, the writing was on the wall for many weeks to come. We saw, a lot of the maps, for example, were showing that the United States was preparing for this. We saw an unprecedented military buildup, the largest of since the United States launched the Iraq War. And of course, we've seen the Pentagon working feverishly through the night for many, many weeks as they've been preparing for this battle. And I think the big question here, Alex, is, what we're going to be discussing in today's video is really, where do we go from here? Because it's not unusual for the United States to launch a war. We know that this is really the neocons. I mean, this is absolutely what happens with the United States government. And what's unfortunately really sad about this, Alex, is that we actually have played that intro. So first of all, credit to Alex for making that intro, guys. He does him and his team do a great job with that. I was sending him some clips earlier because I'm like, hey, put this in there, Alex, because I think if you're active on Twitter right now, this is what's trending right now is incredibly the poster boy of the right-wing movement, which of course was Charlie Kirk. There's a lot of evidence pointing to, for example, why was this man unalived just a few months before this operation was launched? Some conspiracy theories there. But interesting enough, the poster boy of the MAGA crowd and the entire right-wing movement was Charlie Kirk, who surprisingly was very much against us going into Iran. He did not want to do that. Actually, we've seen Donald Trump throughout really over the last decade. He has said during multiple times, claiming that Obama is going to be launching a war against Iran to try to win a re-election bid. Could this actually be Donald Trump's grand plan? Is this how he's trying to win favor, in order to carry the midterm elections? Most importantly, I think the question that we need to answer in today's live stream, Alex, is, where do we go from here? What is the United States game plan? Is this actually good for Iran in the long term? Or is this really just opening a can of worms that is inevitably going to be extremely chaotic moving forward? And gosh, there's just so many different things going on right now as we start today's live stream. Guys, we're already over 1,000 people in the stream. I know this is a very hot topic. Everybody wants to discuss it. So, Alex, I'd like to get kind of your initial thoughts. Were you surprised at all that the United States launched this attack? And, just kind of give me your raw and unfiltered thoughts as we begin our live stream today.
Yeah, I think this is something that, the Trump administration has been planning for a while. Unfortunately, they feel that regime change is the solution to all their problems in America. This is also a deflection of an administration under examination by their voters themselves. Let's not forget how the Epsteins has just disappeared from the headlines. That was causing some serious issues. I know a lot of people out there will say, well, that's conspiracy theory stuff right now. In fact, it's not. We were starting to see arrests last week in the United Kingdom of government figures, of royalty, and who knows how deep that goes. But what great timing it is to unleash an absolutely horrific offensive at the Iranians. Now, I'm going to say this, Cyrus, and I hope that a lot of people will listen up, because this is a very important message. If you are a leader of any country around the world and you are in negotiations either to stop a war, stop a missile program, or stop uranium enrichment, or potentially maybe even stop a trade war, don't sit down with the Trump administration. Don't sit down with Jared. Don't sit down with any people in the administration, because you could probably be dead within 48 hours after those meetings. I don't know what America is thinking when other countries are putting out the hands and saying, let's try diplomacy. Let's try diplomacy. Thursday night, you ask me, is this going to be a full-on war by the weekend? I would say, let's push it back a week, because let's see what happens, in the next meeting. Never was a next meeting. Never was intentions to even, come to a peaceful solution here. America wanted war. America's got war, and look out, because if they think that they're going to bring freedom from dropping bombs from the sky, they got something coming to them, and it ain't going to be good.
Yeah, I think, the interesting thing about this, guys, that we have to remember is I want you to go back to last summer when actually the United States did launch a military attack against Iran. And what was incredible is there's another video clip. I'd have to find it. We could play that. But essentially, for the last 12 months, Alex, Donald Trump has been campaigning that the United States military launched the most successful operation. We completely, I believe the words from Donald Trump are, we've completely obliterated Iran's nuclear capabilities. And so there's a tremendous amount of propaganda coming from the White House right now. And what's interesting is that I have multiple times, I'm going to say at least 5 or 6 times over the last 12 months, Donald Trump has taken to the podium and has basically spread that message that, the United States government is so powerful, the U.S. military is so efficient, so great, that we launched this amazing attack. We, of course, last summer, I think it was maybe June, we bombed Iran. We tried to strategically take out their nuclear enrichment capabilities. And that's what the mission was, right? That was the entire mission. And that was touted to the American public that it was successful. And what's really interesting is if you go to the White House website right now, Alex, you can say there's a very famous article now that is actually contradicting. I can't believe it's actually still up on the United States website, is that Iran's nuclear program has been destroyed, and anybody saying anything different is propaganda. And so, this is what happens with the American people, where we get very frustrated, is that, again, for 12 months, we've been hearing Donald Trump praise the U.S. military and essentially said, look, guys, this is not a problem anymore. We've taken care of that. Now, of course, Alex and I, we were on a live stream, and, we were talking about this last time, that was really just a complete, that was a military attack for show, right? Yes, we launched, we had 3 of our fighter jets go in there. We dropped some bombs. But military experts, we had, for example, guys like Colonel Douglas McGregor. We had, former CIA, Larry Johnson, Scott Ritter, very, very, good insider into all of these things. Thank you for that. All of these guys basically said, look, they dropped some bombs, but they were basically just surface level. Obviously, they're not developing this uranium at the surface, and they're doing it deep underground. They are certainly moving forward to this. And there's also another meme that's really funny, where you see Kim Jong-un, with his young daughter, and he's basically like looking up, and the meme is, yes, this is why daddy, followed through and built a nuclear bomb, because if you have the nuclear capability, that has proven to be the biggest deterrent, right? If you have nuclear capabilities, the United States is not going to mess with you. Best example for that is North Korea. North Korea, I think a far dangerous, more threat, but the key difference here, Alex, is that this is a war that Israel has been preaching about and been wanting for 30 years. Netanyahu has been saying similar propaganda for 3 decades. Any week now, Iran is going to be coming closer to having a bomb. And so I think this is the first major fallacy that we really need to address, right? Again, it's just consistent lies from the U.S. government saying, look, we took out their nuclear capabilities. The war has been won. But ultimately, this was never enough. This was all about filling Netanyahu's objectives. Netanyahu has been salivating at the opportunity to, strike Iran, take out the supreme leader. And again, it's interesting to see how fast things can change and so much of a flip-flop.
Well, there's absolutely no trust anymore. Why would you trust anyone in the United States administration right now? Never. Lindsey Graham, he's loving this. He's probably sitting in his house right now, cracking out the champagne. But I'm going to tell you guys here, regime change has never worked. It never will work. And they may be applauding this at the Pentagon and thinking this was successful, but you haven't seen anything yet. You're not going to win a war from the sky. You won't win it. And this is not Iraq. This is Iran. And if you're going to try to regime change it, you got to have boots on the ground. So bring it on, guys. Bring it on. Bring on your amazing military to the soil of Iran and see where that gets you. We haven't seen anything yet, Cyrus. What I'm talking about here is the economic fallout here for America is going to be absolutely catastrophic. You think you're going to be able to get those shipping lines open and getting that natural gas flowing and that oil flowing? It ain't going to happen. What does that do to the Europeans? That puts them in a very, very bad situation come Monday morning when they know that their Nord Stream line has been shut off for a few years. They've done everything they can with advice from the United States of America to buy, liquefied natural gas or oil from the Americans, which is not cheap. They've canceled the Russians. And the Russians is what everybody needs right now. And what a great time to be a partner of Russia, especially when oil, energy, and other types of even commodities are going to skyrocket. Need I remind you about rare earth?
Yeah, that's a good point. Do we know what the prices of oil are? What are they?
So right now,
Where-
right now, the futures market is closed in the United States. It doesn't open until just after 6 p.m. on Sunday. But there are other,
right.
let's say, trading platforms out there. IG is one. If the viewers want to look, it's IG.com. Look at weekend markets. It's currently, these aren't options or derivatives. These are called CFDs, contracts for differences. Kind of like a friendlier way to trade over the weekend, kind of gray markets. But it is saying that oil is up about 8 to 9% right now, going into tomorrow's trading.
Okay. Yeah, Alex is our market guy. I knew you'd have the answer to that. But I mean, we could see something. We could see something unprecedented with the price of oil going up. And interesting enough, Alex, you did hit on something really important. Is that this actually does favor Russia a lot, because a week ago, the big thing is that Russia's economy is terrible, is that the price of oil has fallen so low that it's not really profitable right now for Putin to be exporting, because he's not really getting a lot. He's already having to discount his oil, sell it to partners like China. But obviously now we're looking at the Strait of Hormuz is actually closed. It is the only tankers that are able to go through there. I should say the only vessels that are able to actually pass through there are Russian and Chinese vessels. Every other vessels have been cut off from that port. And so again, we're going to see another big story here is the commodity war that's going to happen. And I think a really important point that I do want to address is that, there's a lot of propaganda going on where, for example, if you say the things that we're saying right now, a lot of people are trying to label you as, oh, look, you're not supporting America first. You're not supporting, Cyrus, you're a U.S. citizen. You're not supporting, your government. And, for example, are you being sympathetic to the Iranian regime? Did you support the supreme leader? That's not exactly what we're saying. It's not like I'm here on the live stream, Alex, trying to say like, hey, the supreme leader was an amazing guy. This guy was the best for the Iranian people. It's a similar thing. And I think what we can really take a look at is a case study is Venezuela. And this is a really interesting thing, Alex, is we look at Venezuela, and I've had this discussion with a lot of people. For example, when we saw Maduro captured and we saw him arrested, flown on a plane back to New York, and the thought is that this is a great day of liberation for the Venezuelan people. I remember when that happened, I was actually visiting my parents in Florida. We went out to dinner that night, and we actually met a guy from Venezuela who was living in Florida. And he was really happy. He said, oh, this is amazing. This is so great for my country. Maduro's out of there. And I said, can I just ask you a question? What's the government right now in Venezuela? Did by capturing Maduro, did that systematically change anything for Venezuelan people? And he said, well, no, it hasn't, because what happened is obviously the vice president immediately assumed the power, and essentially Maduro's government continued. Actually, it probably got a little bit worse, because the vice president realized that, hey, the country's under attack. We've got to really double up on security. And we've also, there's going to be even less freedom for the people in the streets and things like that. So, but he did say, it's basically like, okay, we got rid of Maduro. At least there's a chance that there could be a change. But the interesting thing, Alex, is this was a few weeks ago now. I mean, this was probably 6 weeks ago that happened.
Right.
So
a bit more than that.
Yeah, maybe 6 to 8 weeks. Actually, no, it was January 3rd, I think it was. So, we're looking at almost 2 months ago. It's roughly 2 months ago when Maduro was captured, right? So what we're looking at right now is that the only systematic thing that's changed in Venezuela, it's not liberation for the people. It's nothing democratic, that's for sure. That's definitely for sure. And what's happened is that the United States has essentially taken that oil. We've stolen it. And we're now selling it. Now, Alex, I don't know if you saw this. I mentioned this in a video that I recorded a couple weeks ago, is that the United States is now selling that oil. And interesting enough, South China Morning Post put out an article saying that China was actually buying the Venezuelan oil like they did before. It's just now that is going to the United States government. So what we've seen here from the U.S. is actually just a systematic kidnapping of the oil. And all they have done is instead of Venezuela selling the oil to China and profiting, it's now the United States government that's selling the oil to China and profiting. So honestly, if I really have a hard time with anybody saying, hey, this is great for the Venezuelan people, this is great for the Iranian people, because, to be honest, Alex, the track record does not indicate that. And you know how we say in the stock market, like past results don't guarantee future profits. But you do look at past results because sometimes it's very indicative of what's going to happen in the future. We know that given the United States track record, it doesn't look well. When has the United States actually launched a regime change by bombing that is actually resulted in something positive? It just doesn't happen. So I think that's a big problem there. So again, I don't think you and I are coming on here trying to say that, hey, we support the supreme leader, who is in fact now been killed. That has been confirmed from Iranian state media. But this is at a tipping point now where it could really escalate and get out of hand.
Yeah, we have to look at what the end game here is for the Americans, and they still haven't figured that out since Desert Storm. And what on earth are they doing in the Middle East? Why? What for? What is the timing all about? And that is the question we have to really ask here, because if it's not a tariff war, it's a turf war. If it's not a turf war, it's from the sky. And they're in the wrong playground here. We've seen Iran lash out to its neighbors, and I think rightfully so. Not in the way that I think military is a good way to lash out, but when you are seeing airstrikes come from neighboring air bases in Doha, neighboring air bases in other countries in the Middle East against you, Iran, you would think your neighbors would not be in bed with the Americans. But if you look at the map and you see how many air bases, the United States has been doing this for years. They've been systematically opening these air bases up, loading them up, and getting ready for a day like yesterday or the day before. Now Iran's saying, you know what? And this is the difference here about, the 12-day. They're going after everyone and everything. And this is all in this time. And I don't think this is going to be over tomorrow or in 12 days. This could drag on quite a long time until we see boots on the ground. And we saw what happened to commodity prices when that last war in Iraq went on. We saw what happened to oil prices. We saw what that country actually did at the end. They lit pretty much the entire oil fields on fire. And that's what you have to imagine. This isn't about going in there systematically removing somebody like you watch in a Hollywood movie. Look, let's take this guy out. Let's put another one in. Hey, they're still waiting for their money in Venezuela, by the way, and the big change that Donnie promised them. But what the Iranians now are faced with is top leaders, they're out. Government, yes, there's going to be a change. Who wants to take that role? I don't know if anybody wants to take that role. Now, what are they going to do? They're going to fight to death, and they're going to drag this thing out as long as possible. And we have not seen the missile capacity that the Iranians have. And when they start to rock and roll with that stuff, then things are going to get real nasty real fast. And like I said, Cyrus, they're going to lash out at everyone when you have nothing to lose now. When you have absolutely nothing to lose, well, what do? You just go for it. And this is what's going to happen. And you saw that remark from Trump that says, Iran, if you think of even pushing back, we're going to bring, the wrath of God to your country. Whatever. No one cares at this point. This is all about survival.
Yeah, I think, what's interesting to see, though, is how Iran has started to retaliate against many of the neighbors in the Middle East, right? We've seen, for example, Dubai, which has always been, the United Arab Emirates has always been a very safe society. One of the safest countries in the world. It is obviously home to many hundreds and hundreds of thousands of expats. It's always been this kind of the crown jewel of the Middle East in the sense that it's been popular with expats for many decades. And all of a sudden, I believe it was the Fairmont Hotel bombed yesterday. We saw a building, the Crown Plaza bombed. We saw Bahrain, that there was a residential building that was hit yesterday. We've seen, excuse me. Drink some water.
Let me take over. Yes, but as what was happening there, you're mentioning these destinations now. For some of our viewers that aren't familiar with the Middle East, some of these are flagship cities renowned cities that are symbols of, the rise of the Middle East. Doha, Qatar, that, they take great pride in building these model cities. Look at Dubai. You don't look at Dubai as an oil city. You look at it as a tourist city, the pinnacle, the icon, the diamond of the Middle East. What's happened? They've been hit, and they've been hit hard. And their tourism business, you got to understand what this does to their tourism business. Dubai is going to be financially hit from this now. They can't say no. They can't. People are going to say, you know what? Do I want to get on a plane and go sit in a nice hotel in Dubai and risk my life? No. Do I want to maybe go on a nice cruise through the Middle East? No. Do I want to go anywhere in the Middle East right now? Probably not. Even in business, you don't want to do it. And like the Iranians said, hey, these probably a lot of soldiers, probably a lot of command centers working out of these 5-star hotels. Well, get ready. You're getting hit as well. And there you go. That's what's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is why, we talked about, the escalation and we had talked about the start of World War III. I mean, we've already seen multiple countries involved. I mean, does this escalate to the point where U.S. troops get on the ground? I think you brought up an interesting thing, Alex, that if there is going to be a regime change, it would actually require that, right? That's what it would require.
Absolutely.
And I think that, right? And I think that's what would really absolutely destroy Donald Trump's presidency. And I think he's kind of in a difficult situation right now because, for example, this already is very unpopular. And, one of the things I wanted to mention to you, Alex, is have you noticed on Twitter how a lot of the MAGA crowd, some of the biggest MAGA influencers out there, have become very vocal and really being against this as well? And, what their thing is, they've said, and I actually agree with them on this, is they said, look, we want America first, right? That's what we want.
Yeah, that's what they voted
right,
for.
That's
you
what
got
they voted
screwed
for,
on
right?
that, people. You got absolutely screwed on that, Americans. You got smoked on that, and you cannot bomb people into freedom. Get that through your head. You cannot bomb people into freedom. And this is what's happened. Sorry for the outburst, Cyrus, but this I just cannot understand. The average American did not vote for this. They don't want this. And this is going on by a small group of neocons that are running that administration. My God. And they tell people to hit the streets in Tehran to take control of their government. Look in the mirror, guys. Look in the mirror. What you've just done, you've just FUCKED your economy. It's going to nosedive. There's nothing that's going to bring this back unless this gets sorted out, and it doesn't sound like it. Not fast at all. Dark times.
Yeah, I think the key thing is that actually I've been following a former U.S. ambassador to Russia, Michael McFaul. He has some interesting takes, and I'm just going to bring up a tweet that he shared here. I think this is really interesting. I was against the war, against this war against Iran. Now that's happening. I hope that it leads to a democratic regime change. I'm elated that the supreme leader is gone, but the arrest of Maduro has not produced democratic regime change yet. The killing of Hamas and Hezbollah leaders did not end those terrorist groups. We have a long way to go before Iranians are free and living under democracy. Celebrate the end of Ali today, but we worry about what comes next tomorrow. And he went on to say more than this, Alex. He said, if we looked at Libya, okay, and we looked at Iraq, he said on day 2, it looked like we were winning. Right. If you go back in time and you look on the second day, it's like, OK, actually, these bombings are pretty good. Like they're actually, it looks like they're going to result in a systematic change. But Alex, we're 48 hours into this. Right. So it's again, when you're 48 hours in, the United States is kind of gloating. Here's Donald Trump taking to the podium saying, look, hey, we've carried out another great operation. And Trump kind of looks like he's really powerful right now. Right. Hey, I was able to launch a military conquest into Venezuela. I was able to capture Maduro. I launched a second military conquest into Iran. I took out the supreme leader. But what happens in the long term, right? That's what we have to really be concerned about. And what Michael McFaul went on to say is he said, I'm very skeptical about this because, number one, we know that Donald Trump is not interested in democratic processes. He's obviously doing a lot of stuff to undermine democracy inside the United States as we speak. We could talk about that more later. But essentially, for example, the midterm elections are coming up, Alex. This is going to be a very big thing. Just for everybody's context on that, in November, U.S. citizens will go to the voting booths. They will vote again. And right now, as of right now, the Republicans control, obviously, the presidency. They control the House and they control the Senate. They control all three branches. And that's why you're seeing a very aggressive move from Trump in these first 2 years of his presidency, because essentially the Democrats cannot block what he is doing. Now, the big problem that he faces is in November. If enough seats switch and the Democrats gain control of both the House and the Senate, all of a sudden, the House and Senate could work together and they could impeach Donald Trump. They could easily pass, impeachment against him for multiple offenses that he's carried out in his second term as president. But the key thing is, Alex, is that I think he's very worried about that. And so what you're seeing is you actually saw Donald Trump say, look, we are going to federalize the midterm elections. Now, for context on that, everybody, in the United States, elections are carried out on the local level. We have 50 states in the United States. Every state has the ability to conduct their own elections. And this is why you actually see different states with different laws. Okay, I believe it is, I think it's New Hampshire or one of the smaller states up north. They actually vote by paper. They still do paper ballots. That's just how they, like one of the counties, they actually do the physical paper ballots. That's always been that way. That's how they want to do it. And that's how they do it up there. Obviously, you see some states with voter machines. Some states do it another way. Some states allow more mail-in ballots, some not. This is how the Constitution is set up. But Donald Trump says, look, I actually want to take control of all voting in the United States. We're going to federalize it. We're not going to allow the states to do that. And I want to be in charge of it. So you're starting to see, again, an overreach from Donald Trump, because if he can control it, if they can federalize it, and he can have supreme control over that, you've got to imagine that he is going to try to influence that outcome. Because again, we have video of this, of Donald Trump saying, I am very concerned with the midterm elections. If the Republicans lose the midterms, they're going to try to impeach me. So again, you have to see the writing that's on the wall here. And again, I think I'm very worried in the long-term future here, because again, there has not been a case of the United States, certainly in the Middle East, launching a military conquest, conducting bombing that's actually resulted in a change for the people that has been for the better. And we can just look back at the United States track record. And this is what Michael McFaul said. I'll make one final point and I'll swing it back to you, Alex. If we look at Michael McFaul, he also said, yeah, the United States has a pretty abysmal record of actually bringing democracy to the world. He said the last time that we were successful was actually the countries of Germany, Italy, and Japan. Of course, he was referring to World War II. Now, for some context, let's not forget that was when the United States had significant troops on the ground. We lost a ton of men and women in that battle. And the problem with that, Alex, is that what we're trying to do? Is that the only way that we could do that? Obviously, World War II was a very different time of the world. And that was a war that the United States fought and obviously won. But the problem is that, is that the only way that we can win? And that's what alludes to your point, Alex, is that the only way for them to do that would have to be boots on the ground. But we've never seen a successful U.S. campaign of regime change in the Middle East. And that's the point that we have to really make clear on today's show.
It's interesting. I've got a question for the viewers here, and thanks everyone for joining. We're still waiting for Carl. He agreed to come in here earlier, so hopefully he jumps on board. But anyway, to his audience, we haven't forgotten about you guys as well. I know Carl's in-depth analysis of this will be amazing. Let's hope he jumps in before we're done. But anyway, this is my question to everyone watching tonight. Who's next? We've seen Iran get absolutely hammered here over the last 72 hours. Who's next? I'm curious to see what the viewers think of what country. Now, we saw just prior to this, I call it an invasion in Iran. But I mean, Cuba, is Cuba next to go? Is another country in South America ready to go? Is it Colombia? Is this the year of the regime change? Is this what the Trump administration's game book and playbook is? I think a lot of people aren't aware with what's going on in the Panama Canal right now, where a court has agreed with the Panamanian government that there were certain things that we're not above board, which I think is absolute bullshit. They tried to pretty much rip that Panama Canal out of the arms of China. And that's going back and forth. That'll go back and forth in court for years. So basically, when something goes wrong in the world, the Americans kill people now. But I have a message I want to say to the viewers out there. The last time I saw this much animosity going on in the world, in cheerleading, I was in school. I watched the first Desert Storm that was covered. And I have to say, it was pretty damn good propaganda from the Western medias back in those years to me. And I'm a bit older now, and I'm understanding a little bit more than I did when I was a teenager. This isn't going to end well. And this actually makes it very unsafe for American citizens now to travel the world, Cyrus. I'm very concerned about this now because the government, the administration, is wreaking havoc across continents around the world. And not only is this putting countries to the wall like Iran, you can just understand the animosity and the protests that are going on, some for the fall and some against it. But what I'm very concerned about is the average safety of Americans now traveling the world, because the last time this type of havoc happened is when America went into the Middle East and just ripped it into shreds. And that's my concern. I'm very concerned about that.
Oh, I mean, I think we all are. And again, I think what really points to, Alex, is that there's a real lack of planning here. And I think that's the United States is very good at launching the initial attack, right? Again, that if you want to give credit, that's where Donald Trump's trying to say is again, look, we did a great job in Venezuela. We took out Maduro. We just did a great job in Iran taking out the supreme leader. But the problem is that it often creates a vacuum. And I have something really interesting here that I want to share, Alex. I think this is, really quite interesting. So I shared a tweet. There was actually an Iranian man that left a message on my YouTube channel. I copied and pasted that and shared it on Twitter. I'm just going to check this because I believe it's probably one of my most viral tweets. I sent it to you because we were going to discuss this. And this is, as of right now, this has 4.2 million views on Twitter. It's been, reposted over 16,000 times. And it's really, I would say it's honestly the best insight that anybody can get into the situation on the ground for Iran. I've actually pasted these in. I'm going to read these out. It's a little bit long, so bear with me here, Alex. But
read it out.
Yeah, you read
perfect.
it.
I read it last night. It was awesome.
Yeah, so here I'm going to bring them up. There's 2 slides. Here's the first one, guys. So, and here we go. I can't read that first part. Basically, I don't trust, it's cut off here on our screen, but it basically says, I don't trust the U.S. or Israel, not because we support our regime, but because we know how imperial powers treat liberated nations in the Middle East. Freedom in their language often means vacuum, fire, and permanent instability. Right now, many Iranians live with 3 truths at once. The Islamic Republic is morally and politically bankrupt. The alternatives offered by foreign actors are not liberation, they're collapse. A bad government is survivable. No government is not. We are not silent because we agree. We are cautious because we've learned too well what happens when superpowers decide to help. In a sentence, Iran is a nation held hostage by its own regime, but haunted by the fate of its neighbors. We are stuck in a house we hate, surrounded by fires we fear more. And that's actually the second part to that tweet. I forgot to share the first part there. No, but I mean, this was a really interesting, really powerful stuff because, that's the problem that, there's very little faith in the United States and Israel. For example, we've seen the plight of the Palestinians, something that we have talked about significantly over the past couple of years. Obviously, a brutal invasion into Palestine, hundreds of thousands of women and children and innocent victims, destroyed. I mean, Alex, we're looking at this military attack. I believe the last count I saw, which was a couple hours ago, the death toll in Iran for the children that were bombed is 154 innocent children that were struck. Now, was that necessary? Now, of course, if we're going to listen to Israel, who has done a tremendous amount of damage, to innocent civilians in Palestine, they're going to, give us the classic line that, unfortunately, in conflict, accidents happen, bad things happen, people die. Not ideal, but, that wasn't our intention. But again, I mean, what a tragedy. What an absolute tragedy that, 150 plus children were annihilated in a school bombing. And again, you feel for the people in Iran. And I think there's an interesting thing here, Alex. I mean, I do want to address that, yes, there are Iranian people that are celebrating in the streets. There are Iranian people living abroad, for example, in the United States that are, happy and saying, look, this is great, because they were oppressed by the supreme leader. The government in Iran is not supported by the majority of the people there. That being said, I think what this guy really nails it on the head. Having a bad government is actually survivable because you know what's at stake, you know what's going on. But having no government is even worse, because that is the ultimate chaos and instability in the region. And so again, you're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place. And I think that's why that comment and that tweet went viral, is because it really, you can see the raw feelings of an actual Iranian man knowing that I can't trust the United States and Israel. You guys are never going to actually put our interests ahead of you. And we also know that from the Iranian side is that they certainly knew that there was a high chance that the supreme leader would get assassinated. He certainly was. Who's going to rise up to power next? More than likely, I think for Iran, it's a much more complex nation, right? Like you mentioned earlier, this is 90 million people. This is a society that has thousands of years of history. We go back in time. Obviously, it was the kingdom of Persia. Actually, interesting enough, it was the great king of Cyrus of Persia that actually was the one who freed the Jews back in the day. That name Cyrus, that's actually where my name comes from. It does come from the Bible, comes from the book of Ezra, where it talks specifically about that story. When I sat down with Professor Jeffrey Sachs, he actually had about a 5 to 6 minute dialogue, Alex, that was really fascinating because he talked about it from a theological standpoint. We talked about, for example, Huckabee. Huckabee is the United States ambassador to Israel. Very famously, just maybe about a week ago, Huckabee was giving an interview and he said, we personally would like to see Israel control the entire Middle East. If Israel were to gain control of the entire Middle East in its entirety, the United States wouldn't mind that. Because why? Because that land was promised to Israel in the Bible. And Jeffrey Sachs really did a good job of breaking that down, simply saying that, look, this was something that was mentioned very early in the Bible, but all of that changed. I mean, even if we want to get religious on this or go into theology, that changed completely with the birth of Christ. And, when Christ came, basically the message is that this salvation is for everybody, not just for Jewish people. And so actually that entire thing changes. And of course, as we know, the world goes on. The world continues to evolve. We now live in a world that is supposed to be governed with, international law and international rules. For example, territories and boundaries and established countries. There's absolutely every right for the Palestinians to exist. There's absolutely every right for the Palestinians to have their own state. It's absolutely a right for the Palestinians to the right for self-determination, to determine what that group of people want to do. This is the world that we live in. We're not living in the biblical days where there was a lot more chaos and war and instability. We have international law and rule. And this is where I think things get really dangerous for the United States and, what's going to happen in the future.
I'm just going to change my camera battery. And once I'm back, I got lots to say. Okay.
Absolutely. Well, guys, let's go here. We've very strong here. We have nearly 3,000 people in the chat here. So, Canada and Mexico are next on Trump's hit list. I think that, I mean, Alex, you and I are both, Canadian citizens as well. I think what's interesting, I honestly think that, Canada is not going to have any effect here. There's
no I wouldn't rule that out. I would not rule that out, Cyrus. And I'm serious about that. Not at all now. Nope. Yeah. Not at all.
I think one thing
coming out of that administration at all.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen, Greenland, I mean, has been attacked, and then, I mean, there's just, I mean, honestly, Alex, the start to geopolitics in 2026 has been about as wild as it possibly could be. I mean, you couldn't have imagined our world, descending. The first 2 months of 2026 has been just a geopolitical chaos, and to be honest with you, and how everything is going. I mean, it's just remarkable.
Yeah, I'll get my camera back in a moment here, Cyrus. Just a small
Okay, no
issue.
problem.
Another thing that I'd like to mention while we're chatting about it, and yeah, I don't think Canada has a green card pass to the Americans here. I think it's very vulnerable. If they get a lot of support in Alberta, they could convince the Albertans, which is a province in Canada, to actually separate. And that is a real likelihood. Another thing is you mentioned Huckabee. I mean, he's not the American ambassador in Israel. He's the Israeli ambassador in Israel.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I wanted to mention is Jared Kushner. I have now called him, my new name for him is The Undertaker, because if you sit down with a meeting with that guy, 48 hours later, you're dead. So, if we're talking about the Russians having meetings to negotiate peace settlements, forget it. Why would you sit down with the United States? Why? Just ignore them. And I think Vladimir Putin's got to put a message out there. And, I would like peace in Ukraine, but at what point? Instability? What is he going to ask the Putin government to give up the warheads? It's just not happening. And that's why some of these leaders are so reluctant to, either seek nuclear ambition or give up nuclear ambitions. Because if not, any leader is, clinically in serious trouble here. Yeah. Back to you.
We mentioned that with North Korea, for example. I mean, that's the one country that you'd see the United States essentially just leaving alone, right? North Korea is going to do their thing. They're obviously, once you have those nuclear weapons, it is a huge deterrent. Interesting enough, we did make a video on the channel a few months ago. I'm going to say actually it was around the time of the bombing of Iran, which was, I believe, last June, I'm going to say, somewhere around there, I think is when the United States launched that attack on Iran to supposedly destroy their nuclear capabilities. And, the funny thing, not the funny thing, but the interesting thing, how we framed that video, Alex, is that, the Middle East would ironically be a lot more peaceful if Iran actually did have a nuclear weapon, because there wouldn't, again, if you have a nuke, you're not going to get attacked. And that's kind of the world that we live in right now. So like you said, if you're Vladimir Putin, you're going to be going forward, very skeptical of how the United States is going to negotiate with you. I think we also have to just call out the corruption. I mean, Alex, this is remarkable with this Board of Peace. Isn't that amazing? Trump launches the Board of Peace. I believe that Israel gives him some amazing peace award. Everyone's just kind of kissing up to Donald Trump, but he launches the Board of Peace. He takes $10 billion from the United States taxpayer, and he actually, then transfers that to an offshore account, for the Board of Peace. And by the way, everybody, the Board of Peace, that bank account is in an offshore account, and it is controlled solely by Donald Trump, and it will be controlled by Donald Trump in perpetuity. So that means that if, in fact, Donald Trump does lose the next election, which, by the way, he's not actually eligible to run. And this is something that was also very scary, Alex, is that Donald Trump in a news conference yesterday was telling the American public, I believe that I'm entitled to run a third term. Why am I entitled? Because I think we've done a great job. I think that I was cheated out of the second election. So just because I'm doing well and the United States is doing great, and because I feel like it, I'm entitled to that. And it's very concerning to me as a U.S. citizen to listen to Donald Trump use this entitlement word, and then also hear a lot of the MAGA crowd and a lot of the MAGA influencers kind of jump on that bandwagon and say, you know what, Trump is entitled to that. Why not? Why not? And I think what's the problem here, everybody, is that directly undermines the United States democracy. Okay, that is not how the Constitution is built. The Constitution very clearly states that there is only 2 terms for a US president. Now, if Trump wanted to ratify the Constitution, that's something that is certainly legal. That is certainly something that Donald Trump, could do if that's the route that he wants to go. That would be the legal way to go about this. So again, I'm very skeptical for him to be able to launch a successful democracy campaign in the Middle East for 2 reasons. Number one, the United States has a O for whatever it is, 8 or 9. I mean, they've never had a successful regime change in the Middle East that has actually resulted in something better for the citizens of that nation. And I'm going to say that one more time. Over the course of history, the United States has been involved in the Middle East for decades, and we have never gone in and successfully launched a regime change campaign that has actually resulted in a tangible benefit for the local people. Okay. Exactly. And many times, if we look at, for example, Libya, Libya at one point, I believe it had the highest literacy rate. There was a tremendous amount of women going to university in Libya. We can say that, its leader was corrupt, it was this and that. But the problem is that we left Libya it basically descended into civil war. And that's what, is essentially potentially going to happen in Iran. You could see there's a couple options for Iran right now. You could probably see, someone to replace the supreme leader. Obviously, whoever's next in line, they could go through that. They can basically elect or select the next leader to then take control and basically continue as it was. Or you could potentially see, again, you have a country of 90 million people. I mean, we forget how big Iran is and how vast and how populated that country is. You could also see this break into different enclaves of different religious groups and different types of people. And then you have a civil war breakout and again, that's the thing that we're alluding to. But again, we go back to Afghanistan. Look at our track record there. We spent 20 years. We spent $2 trillion to replace the Taliban with the Taliban. Okay, yeah, that's who's controlling Afghanistan right now. And again, I remember being in university. I was in university when we launched that that war, and I remember being in university and everybody coming back and telling us, the message to the American people are, we've got to liberate these people. This is what they need. And I never forget, Alex, this was long before I took an interest in geopolitics. This is long before, even YouTube was around, in the early 2000s. I remember being in class at Florida State University, and I remember there was a student there who actually, he had served 4 years in the military. He was actually stationed overseas in Afghanistan. And what was interesting, Alex, is he told this story where he said, the people, they didn't understand how democracy worked, and they didn't understand that you had to go out and elect the people. So what did we do as the military? Well, we literally went in with guns. We dragged them out of their houses. We forced them to stand in line. We basically held a gun to their head and said, you have to vote now. And the people didn't want it. And for him, it was really strange because he's just like, I didn't get it. Like, why didn't they want this? Wasn't this the whole point of the war? We're trying to give you democracy, but the people didn't want it. And I remember just being a young university student, again, not really understanding the full picture, but I kind of thought, well, maybe that's just their culture, or maybe that's just not how their country operates. It's kind of hard to say, we're going to take this American style democracy and just plug it into your country, and then off you go. Everything is going to work out great. And again, that's what it kind of goes back to, for example, if we look at Germany and we say, well, you know what? The United States successfully did that in Germany after World War II. Well, yeah, let's not forget how many lives were lost in that war. How big of that effort was, to fight World War II. Not only that, how much support did the United States give all of Europe afterwards in order to rebuild Europe after the war? There was a tremendous amount of efforts given. My mother is from Germany, and she was born in 1944. So, she grew up post World War II. And, she had said that even as a child, as a young child and as a teenager, she was living near the city of Frankfurt. And there was a tremendous amount of U.S. military presence. There still is. There's actually a very large U.S. military base in Frankfurt. And basically, for the years that she was growing up in Germany, there was always U.S. military around because they had to put in a substantial amount of work in order for that to happen. And again, this was Germany, right? This is a culture, European culture is obviously much more similar to American culture. Once you get to the Middle East, that culture is completely different, right? It's nowhere near, it's nothing close to American culture. So that's the problem, right? That's the problem where we look at this, is that it's going to require a significant amount of energy. It's going to require trillions of dollars. It's going to require a lot of boots on the ground. And I think now what you're seeing is why we're seeing a big pushback from this is, I think it was, again, Lindsey Graham, who, I mean, we could make a whole episode on just how corrupt this guy is. I mean, he's the ultimate neocon. Now they're saying, look, if there are American lives lost, they're going to die a noble death because they're helping this out. And again, it's the propaganda, Alex. It's the propaganda of saying, this is actually in America's interest because Iran was a threat to the United States. How was Iran? Yeah, I mean, that's it, right. Like how was Iran anywhere close to being a source of stress or a potential conflict to U.S. citizens? It wasn't.
What I think confuses a lot of people is they think, well, if America just goes in the regime change, pops in a new government, it's just business as usual. Here's the complex part about it. First of all, you have religion and then you have government involved in these parts of the world. Very complex, okay? Very complex. I also remember speaking to a friend of mine that was Libyan, that was there during, the American invasion in that country. As he echoed what you said, the hospitals were amazing. The education system was amazing. His country was amazing until everything was taken away from him and it ended in chaos. The country's in chaos now. He's had to flee his home, sell some of his land for pennies on the dollars. And yeah, he comes knocking on the doors of the countries that screwed him. He comes knocking on the doors to America and he goes, knock, knock, who's there? You owe me. You've burned my livelihood. My home is pretty much gone. My land is pennies on the dollars. There's instability. He said he couldn't even go back years ago to renew his passport. It was so dangerous. So we wonder why a lot of these people end up in our country as refugees or, people that have had their countries absolutely destroyed from America. Canada's not innocent in all this as well. We've been involved in many conflicts, and we see Carney's language today, which I don't totally agree with either. It's not about, taking out religious leaders and then taking out the government and propping a new government in there. We have to understand that some people will not want this job after they've seen what happened. Oh, if I don't balance the books or if I have a small protest in the city center, well, guess I'm dead too. Well, if I don't do what Daddy Trump does in the United States and you send over Jared, I guess I'm dead too. So these countries are looking at this and saying, wait a minute, this is pretty dangerous stuff. Look what happened to Maduro in the middle of the night. People died for the Americans to go in there and arrest him on quite the interesting arrest thing, conspiracy to this and conspiracy to do that. And it's just a revolving door and it's very dangerous policy. I mean, are we going to now look at other religions around the world and start saying, hey, wait a minute, where's the end for the Trump administration? I laughed last year when he said that Canada could become the 51st state of America. I'm Canadian. After this weekend, I think this guy is nuts enough to probably do something crazy enough to do that, or even Greenland, or who knows where he's going to stop. But going in there full on regime change, Iran, good luck. It's not going to happen. It's going to end in tears. It's going to end with you, the taxpayer, the American taxpayer, throwing another $3 to $5 trillion on that good old American credit card for your grandchildren and their children to pay off for a lifetime. No wonder America is $35 trillion into debt. Just got to count the wars, follow the money. That's exactly where it is.
I think you're off on that number, Alex. I think we're already past 37 trillion. I think
we up to 37 now.
Let me. It's well. We can go to U.S. National. What is it? The debt clock. Debtclock.org.
Yeah, go to the debt clock. He must have added 2 trillion in the last year. Then is that the 1.5?
38.8, buddy. 38.8.
And by the time we're done this live stream, it'll be 39. So
It's getting close. I did want to answer some. We do have a lot of people in the comment section here. So somebody asked, "Is this a pre-recorded thing?" No, we are live right now, guys. So I did see that comment here. There's some interesting things here because we have some people that are disagreeing. Right? They're saying, "Look, if you want to make an omelet, you got to break some eggs." That's Tom saying there. But Kitty Cat coming back with, there's going to be another supreme leader ready to take over. That's certainly one of the probably the clearest options there. And again, we can look at a case study would be Venezuela, right? That's the key thing I want people to understand. 2 months later, after Maduro's captured, there's nothing for the people. And that's the problem with the messaging here, right? We always message, to you and I and to the American public, we have liberated the Venezuelan people. No, we haven't. We've done nothing. Now, again, it is a positive in the sense that, okay, Maduro was not a good guy. Okay, he wasn't also popular in his country. But the problem is, what do you replace that with, right? It's not like in order to launch that regime change and really have that systematic change, it's going to require boots on the ground. So are you willing to take that extra step and do that? Again, we don't have a good track record. I know I sound a bit like a broken record, but, I like to deal with the facts. And so, again, another person said in here, Cyrus, I disagree with you. The Iranian people have never been closer to their freedom. And that again, I think is, again, similar to what I said earlier. Libya on day 2 looked like a good thing. Libya on day 2, Iraq on day 2 looked like we were winning. Looked like, yes, this is the goal that is accomplishment. But we have to zoom out a year from now, 5 years from now, what's really going to happen? And the problem is that it creates instability. And obviously it's the power vacuum. And when a power vacuum exists, Alex, that's usually when countries descend into a civil war. And that's how Libya got absolutely destroyed. And it's nowhere near as prosperous as it was. Of course, when we saw Iraq and the fall of that gave way to ISIS and a whole bunch of, totalitarian groups that were far more oppressive than what was there beforehand. So again, I want to be very clear on this because this is the problem that, we have right now where people are saying, oh, you're just some leftist that feels sympathy for the supreme leader. I'm not a supporter of the supreme leader. I know that he is very unhappy, unpopular in his own country, but what is the game plan afterwards?
Yeah, well, Trump is unpopular in his own country. So what should we do about that? What should we do? You know what? People take to the streets, bring your government back to what you want it to be. I mean, that is the verbiage that comes out of the mouths of this current administration is crazy. Head to the streets, Iranians, take your country back. We support you. Not a good time to go outside in the next 48 hours to do that because 1,200 bombs and missiles have been flying from next door neighbor Israel. I mean, what has Iranians done to any of the Western countries in the last, since I've been on the earth? Okay. Of course, there's been some skirmishes between countries. That happens a lot. But do we really understand Iran? Do we really understand the government, how it works there? Do we understand, our administration? Do they understand that? Do they understand when they took Maduro out that, yes, somebody's replaced him? And what now? What's going on? Nothing's happened there. It's going to be a power vacuum. The country is going to be more in debt. They're going to be cut off. They're going to be sanctioned unless they toe the line. And this is the interesting thing about where we have China now, and we have Russia, we have BRICS. Everyone's planning for this. We're going to decouple from that dollar, and America's going to become very isolated. These cheerleaders of this war, let's bring down Iran, let's bring down the regime. Guys, think logical about this. It's not a good move. Diplomacy should be the route to do this. But when you send over the Undertaker, Jared Kushner, you're dead in the water. And everyone's tired of this bomb, bully, and bankrupt strategy that America uses on other nations. It's, let's not be comical here and think that this cannot happen to us. No country is safe at this moment, as far as I'm concerned, because this could set off a chain reaction. And if you can bring up a couple of one photo I sent you, I don't know if you've loaded it or not. The Iranians have some pretty serious power they haven't used yet.
Yeah,
and if they get backed into a corner, which I fear the most, we're going to see some rockets that we've never seen before. And I'll give the viewers just an idea here. We had Scott Ritter on my program last year, and we were speaking about the Iranian stockpile. And he was also discussing the Reznik missile from Russia that Russia had in its arsenal. It wouldn't surprise me if both of these countries work together on missile programs, especially drone technology. But not too long ago, 3 or 4 months ago,
I'm going to bring that graphic up. Why don't you break it down for everybody?
Sure. See if I can get it full screen here. So let me know when it's up.
We're up.
We're up. Okay. I'm just on a little bit of a screen delay here. So guys, have a look at this here. You could see the war payload and the distance range. Okay. And I don't want to compare apples to oranges here, but I just want to give the viewers a very clear understanding about what kind of stuff we're talking about here. The Russians shot near Reznik just outside of Kiev a few months ago. That scared the living hell out of the Ukrainian government, Zelensky and all. It's a missile that goes into outer space, comes back, drops down, then splits into 6 pieces, and no matter how great of Golden Dome or Iron Dome that you have, nothing will stop it. And I know the Iranians, the hypersonic missiles, the ICBMs, this is a very powerful stockpile, and they haven't used it yet. I hope they don't have to. I hope we never see one of them ever go into the skies. But if we do, look out, because it's going to be quite dangerous. And we see a lot of people, in the chat say that, most of this stuff has been taken out. Guys, they've been planning for this conflict for decades. And, and again, Cyrus, this comes back to, everyone thought that Desert Storm would be over in 10 days. Operation Desert Storm in the United States and in Iraq. They thought, okay, no problem. We're going to be able to, but it went on for months and months and months. I'm fearing the most here, and I'm concerned because also we have to understand that America's stockpile has been depleted over the last 3 to 4 years with supplying and bragging about supplying so much, artillery to the Zelensky government, and the shelves are bare. And I'm not convinced that, unless America, single-handedly gets these guys under control here in the next week or two, then it's going to get really bloody really fast. And, it could be out of control. We do see some people in the chat here talking about it. Ritter says the Golden Dome plan is bad because that it will fail too. So, it's great that we have a lot of people in our chat that are very up to speed with the geopolitics. This has been a fantastic live stream, Cyrus. Just, communicating with everyone out there. I'm hoping for the best here. I hope things will abruptly come to an end, but I'm not convinced. And where does China play in all this? That's a question I wanted to ask you. And before we go, we should play a clip of one of our reporters that did speak to somebody who is a business owner. This was a very interesting 1-minute interview. He was a Chinese business owner, and I will get
That's the second clip you sent me, right? I got it right here.
Yeah, I'm just, before we play it, just going to give you some context behind it, because it was quite an interesting story, and I appreciate that they got the the clip up quickly. They had to edit in time. So a big shout out to Kenny. Thank you for that. From the Western China International Communication Organization. Anyway, this is a gentleman. He's interviewing a guy named Sloan, a Chinese businessman. He's in Abu Dhabi, United Arab Emirates. These guys pretty much thought for years that this area was pretty much safe as houses. If we can play that clip, it's only about a minute, guys. Let's have a look at it.
So you firstly heard the explosion around noontime yesterday. What was your reaction? What was your reaction?
Reaction, as I mentioned to you, is like it's really shocking. It's really shocking. It's really hard to describe this kind of feeling because it's the first time that, at least personally, it's my first time to have this much close contact to the real scenarios of the war, this kind of killing weapons. I have visited a lot of those kind of so-called defense exhibitions. We have this kind of close contact with this kind of like the military weapons and all those kind of the high-tech weapons. But that is inside exhibition hall. But this time, it is not. It's happening right in front of your eyes. And they might be coming down and to kill you any moment in your life. So this kind of feeling is really, really difficult to describe. And then, and I think that I need some time to recover and summarize from my side as well. Because this thing is still like, luckily today, so far here in UAE, we don't have any kind of missiles like interceptions as what had happened yesterday. So luckily, so far it is so far so good. But in our neighboring brother countries like Qatar and Bahrain, especially Qatar, Doha, still a lot of those kind of missiles are coming back and forth. Because the largest USA airbase is based there in Doha. So that is why like this from the Iranian side, still a lot of missiles are coming even right now today.
Wow. Pretty powerful stuff to hear from, just the average person. And I know what he's talking about. I was in the weaponry hall in 2024 looking at China's collection of missiles. And that was very impressive. I think something that we have to say, and I would credit the Chinese government here, is the restraint. They're not getting involved, but they are showing their displeasure and humanity. And they are a role model country here, Cyrus. I have to tell you, living here in China and understanding people are looking at, this is, of course, an absolute tragedy to happen. But this is a country that is very powerful with a very powerful military. They can, if they want, decide who they side with, but they are, showing restraint and trying to be, I think, the role model of, I would say, a country that gives people hope in today's world here. There's just so much bloodshed across the Middle East and so much anarchy that the American government and, that regime there is wreaking havoc in South America. But then you have China that's, they're not about bombs, bullying, and bankrupt. They're about business. And that's where I have to, say that I feel proud to live here and proud to work in, China. And it's devastating to see what is happening out there. I can't even imagine what the mood set. What would it? I mean, you're currently not in the U.S. right now, but what is the mood in America? Is it divided? Is it and guys, don't get me wrong. I mean, got to remember years ago when I was on this live stream, I was quite a supporter of the Trump administration many, many years ago, and it's just changed to me. I don't even recognize the message that they're giving the people of America right now. Cyrus, it's a country that I'm totally lost to try to understand what's going on over there.
I think most American citizens, I think most U.S. citizens are actually lost as well, Alex. And I'm, like you said, I'm actually abroad right now. I'm actually in Barcelona, Spain. I'm attending another event here at the moment. I'm here for the next few days before I go back to the United States. But I would say right now, what we're seeing is from the United States, a lot of people are also very concerned in this because this is not what the United States or this is not what Donald Trump ran on. And I think that, again, one of the interesting voices was Charlie Kirk, who was very much against an attack on Iran. And I think what you're also starting to see, Alex, is you're starting to see some mega influencers from the right wing. somebody like Matt Walsh, someone like David Sachs. David Sachs is very close to the Trump administration. He's called like the czar of crypto, very big influencer for the MAGA crowd. You've got Matt Walsh, who is on the Daily Wire. He's a mega right-wing influencer with millions of followers. And Matt Walsh had a really interesting insight where he said, I am always pro-U.S. military, and I always believe that we should strike hard and strike fast when U.S. lives are in danger. Now, for me, the problem with the Iran, bombing of Iran and taking out the supreme leader is I fail to understand how this benefits America. How does this benefit the United States? And so that's again a very interesting shift, because we saw Donald Trump over the past 10 years multiple times. He warned Obama's going to try to start a war with Iran. Obama, because he's not good at diplomacy, is going to use an attack on Iran in order to get reelected. This was the constant talking point from Trump. And again, even, as recently as his recent campaign saying, look, if you elect me, I'm the pro-peace president, right? We saw Donald Trump, basically say, look, I stopped 8 wars last year. Now that, of course, was propaganda. Half of the battles that he talked about, the United States didn't mediate in. But, what happens in Donald Trump's brain is different. He believes that he did it. So he's going to keep, telling everybody. And the problem is you have a lot of ignorant people in the United States who, they couldn't point to those countries on a map. You say like, oh, I ended the war in Rwanda. Okay, I don't even know where Rwanda is. So sounds good. If that's what you say, Trump, then we believe you. So, Trump knows that. He can play into the ignorance of many U.S. citizens and simply claim, hey, I stopped 8 wars. And guess what? I deserve the Nobel Peace Prize. And then you've got Machado, who won the Nobel Peace Prize. And again, that was really, a very interesting situation, because she came to the White House and gifted Donald Trump, the Nobel Peace Prize. So again, he can, claim that he's the peace president. So even as recent as just a couple months ago, you have a very different message from Donald Trump. So again, I think that there's also, I've seen an interesting comment on Twitter where people were saying, you know what, does Netanyahu really just have, it's almost like blackmail. It's almost like Netanyahu has something over Donald Trump and is forcing him to do this because this is Israeli interest. And I'm going to just point people to, we've had some people comment on here like, guys, thank you so much. Just found your channel. We're going to subscribe to both you and Alex. Appreciate the support. Definitely check out the last video that I have live on my channel. It is a chat with Professor Jeffrey Sachs, who really lays it out very clearly, Israel's involvement in this. Again, this is the United States, again, acting in the best interest of Israel. So when you go and you ask me, Alex, what is the sentiment in the United States? I think you're seeing a lot of confusion, certainly among the right wing who campaigned on an America First policy. They want to see the best decisions made for U.S. citizens. And I think a lot of the right wingers are actually very confused right now. And they're really trying to figure out, how does this benefit me? Because, they're saying, look, I want a president that serves my interests, right? We should rebuild hospitals. We should rebuild infrastructure. We should improve our schools. There are a plethora of problems inside the United States that the United States government can certainly address. But this is something that we're seeing Donald Trump not doing. When you have the Board of Peace established, and then all of a sudden $10 billion transferred from U.S. taxpayers into a private offshore account that only Donald Trump controls in perpetuity, that's an issue. Then you have Jared Kushner. You said the Undertaker. Well, guess what? Undertaker. He's the guy that is now in charge of rebuilding Gaza with these funds. And you can imagine how many private companies and how many kickbacks are going to happen there if they are actually able to go forward in this plan and actually rebuild Gaza. So you see a tremendous amount of corruption that's going on right now. None of this is constitutional. All of this is illegal, but there is no checks and balances in the United States. And so I think it's also very ironic when you say we want to bring democracy to Iran, because Donald Trump is single-handedly the biggest threat to American democracy right now. Again, I mentioned that earlier with the midterm elections. I think that you're definitely going to see Donald Trump directly influence and try his best to sway the outcome of the midterm elections. He knows that his time is very limited. If the Democrats gain control of the House and the Senate, he knows that he will be impeached. So in his interest to preserve himself, he will do anything he can. Obviously, it's kind of interesting, right? The Epstein files, Alex. We haven't really talked about that, but we look at how many people around the world have been arrested because of their connection to Epstein, but not a single U.S. politician. And let's be honest, both the Republicans and the Democrats, loads of them are in those Epstein files. Certainly Donald Trump has been not mentioned many, many times. We know that he's deep in the Epstein files. So I think that I think this is not only a dangerous situation for Iran. We talked about the missiles that they have. We talked about, I mean, just starting to look at Doha, look at the United Arab Emirates, look at these countries, Bahrain, that are all peaceful, that have never had any type of military attack. Now, all of a sudden, they've had military attacks, and it's just instability across that entire region. At the event I talked to a Turkish man, and he talked about, we're monitoring this situation very closely because look at our border. We have a border with Iraq, with Syria, Iran. This is going to cause a tremendous amount of stress. So that southern border of Turkey under a lot of stress right now, because if this descends into chaos, you could see potentially, a tremendous amount of refugees trying to flee it and then going over to Turkey, which is going to just be more chaos and instability. So again, it's this is why diplomacy is needed. And so again, I think the purpose of today's live stream is honestly just getting out here and talking about the facts and issuing our concern right now. I think when you do look at China, I'm just going to mention this as the last thing. A lot of people are saying that this actually isn't about Iran. It's about cutting off China from oil. And I think an interesting thing there, Alex, is we proved that earlier in the stream when I said, look, Venezuelan oil is still being sold to China. The United States wants to make a buck. They didn't cut off China. They're still selling it. It's just that instead of the Venezuela government profiting, it is now the United States government profiting. And we have access to oil from around the world. They have nearly 2 billion barrels of oil that is actually in reserves. So China always has options, and China always has. Don't forget, guys, China is the top trading partner to over 120 countries around the world. China has a tremendous amount of options. But Alex, I want to just say thank you so much for jumping on this live stream. I know it's late over there in China. It's kind of fun. We're all over the world. I'm over in Europe right now. But I'm going to leave you with the last comments to just kind of close this out.
Sure. Now, with geopolitical firestorms like this, it does play a major effect on the equity markets. I know everyone's going to be going through a very nervous week here in the equity markets. I've been trading the derivatives markets for almost 20 years now. And some of these stock portfolios are going to come under some serious pressure here. So guys, pay attention to my channel as well. And as Cyrus mentioned before, I'm a market guy. Just wanted to put a little bug in your guys' ear here. I did unravel something last week that was quite spectacular on the financial markets. I'm not going to name the company, but they are one of the world's largest proprietary trading and market making firms, specializing in quantitative analysis and highly active in derivatives market. These guys have wreaked a lot of havoc here. They will continue to do it. Follow my channel at Reportify Media. Email me if you want, but wait till this really hits the press and goes mainstream. If you think the American government and the administration is not involved on what I've pretty much discovered here on my research over the weekend, extended research over the weekend, just getting tipped off from this last Friday, look out. This market's going to get very interesting very fast. And thanks again, Cyrus, for doing this emergency live stream. I know we were both traveling. We're both busy guys, but wow, what a great turnout today. And it's you, the viewers, that really make it motivate Cyrus and I to come do these shows. And we're going to step up our game. We're always talking about it. But guys, when we get that time, we are definitely going to put that energy into you, the viewers. Once again, thanks, everyone. And unfortunately, Carl couldn't make it today. I don't know why. Maybe he might have thought it was another day. But anyway, I'll get him on a live and his audience. We owe it to you guys. But thanks for sitting through listening to Cyrus and I. We greatly appreciate it.
Absolutely, guys. All right, we'll do our classic show ending. Everyone, thank you for your amazing support, and we look forward to seeing you guys in another live stream very soon.